Breaking news: National Hurricane Center just updated the chances for tropical storm Josephine, tropical depression 10, I think it is, or 11, to a 90% chance, which is pretty much a 100% chance. I put it as a 100% chance myself. Now, as you can see right here, it is located in the main development region. It's been going through its journey through the main development region, and it now has a pretty high chance of becoming our next named system already, Tropical Storm Josephine. We haven't been getting a break this season. It's just been systems over systems. But anyways, this is where it could potentially form in the next 5 days or so. National Hurricane Center, this is what it's saying. It is saying by the end of the week, we'll have less conductive environment for development. But if it is already formed enough, that could not be too much of a problem for the system. So we're gonna have to monitor this pretty quickly. Now, it has gotten a lot more conviction, a lot more organization in the last couple of hours, which is why the National Hurricane Center went ahead and made that jump from 70 to 90% chance. And you can see right here, it's a rather small system right located around here, and it lost its earlier today, it really looked like a tropical wave. It was just like a little band with some kind of circulation. But now it has really gotten a whole lot more circular. And with most of the convection starting to really form over the center of the system, which is why it has really become a lot more organized, but in that process, a whole lot smaller, which could also be a good thing for this kind of system. Here's the latest satellite imagery. So as you can see, again, we can clearly see that convection has really blown up over the center of that system with some nice outflow starting to form. So we have really a system that is further developing. The center seems to be around, not sure, but maybe around here, a little bit offset from the convection, slightly offset to the east of the convection, I believe, or to the west of the convection, just slightly. I think it's to the east, but it is a little bit offset from the main convection. Now, in the last couple of frames, the convection has been dying down, which, could it be a sign that it might not hold off? Because the National Hurricane Center does says they could become a tropical depression later today if it does hold up its convection and it's a trend of it continuing. And, if we do look on the latest frame for the system, we can clearly see that it's gotten rather smaller and a whole lot less convection. But systems do tend to blow up, fall apart, and then maybe we'll see a big blow up of convection again in the next frame. So, but right now it's a little bit smaller than this morning or earlier today. If we do zoom it back out, you can clearly see that it was a whole lot smaller, a whole lot bigger earlier today. But that that doesn't mean it might not form. But yeah, it did look better earlier today. But we could very well still see this become a tropical depression very soon. Here's the latest track from the models. Now, this is a little bit of bad news because the new trend in the models is a shift towards a track more towards the U.S. or towards Puerto Rico. Earlier in the week, yesterday, and stuff like that, the trend was of a track going out to sea. Even earlier in the yesterday, every single model pretty much brought it like this. Every single model brought it like a little bit like this, a little bit like the Gem 2. But now the trend has been a southern more track, but that could bring more impacts not only to the upper Antilles, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, but potentially towards the track towards the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, or the east coast of the United States. So that is rather a concerning track if it is going to be taking. But we know for sure at least it's going to be going that direction. Until then, it does become a little bit more uncertain. But we know almost for sure that it's going to be following this track right here almost exactly. But then after that, this is a little bit more of uncertainty when it starts to get in a little bit less favorable conditions. That's when we don't really know. But you do see two of those models bring it out to sea. All the other models bring it, pretty much kind of like Isaias. But as we remember with Isaias, at some point all the models brought it out to sea. It can still change, and maybe by the time it's over here, it might not. It might be all the way down there. and it might be all the way up there. So things can change. This is not for sure, but the trend has been for track potentially impacting more of the Caribbean, which is never a good thing for those islands. Now, here's a look at the intensity guidance. Now, this is also bad news because now pretty much every single model has jumped on board with a tropical storm, or yesterday, only two models showed this becoming a tropical storm. So, models are becoming more certain. But after the 72 period mark, it does show a drop off. And, if we do look here to 72, it is around right here, which is where I said it becomes uncertain because we get into less favorable and um, conductive areas for development. So that's why we do see a drop off in those models, whether it's going to survive or bust. Is it going to be is it going to be well enough formed for it to survive in those unfavorable environment, or is it going to be, kind of dying down or staying at a very low tropical storm? So this is really where it becomes uncertain after that 72 period mark, not only in the track forecast, but also in the intensity forecast for the system. So really, we only have 72 hours. It looks like for this to really get its act together for it to be able to survive those unfavorable conditions in the next couple of days, the next 3 days or so. But models show it peaking at around maybe potentially 60 mile per hour at most in the next 72 hours. So it is it is possible, but on average models show it becoming at around 50 miles per hour in the next 72 hours before starting to weaken. But it looks like models do agree this could be a tropical storm in the next 24 36 hours, which if it continues to strengthen the way it is likely. Even in the 24 hours, we could very likely see tropical storm Josephine with this. Now, the DSHP model does show a kind of not a drop off, but a stagnant intensity, not weakening but not strengthening. But then it does show it strengthen back to Category 1. And I will not rule out the possibility to become Hurricane Josephine, but that's just going to see how it's going to be surviving those a little bit of unfavorable conditions, but they aren't the worst conditions there. Now, he's part of those unfavorable conditions right there. It is located right around here, that little blob here. Now, 72-hour period, it's going to be technically located right around here. So, if we take that into consideration, its track right now, it's something a little bit like this, maybe going like this. We don't really know. But in the next 72 hours, it's going to be right where the wind shear becomes unfavorable with around 30 knots. Now, of course, this is going to be in 3 days, so the wind shear can still change, of course. But it is when those wind shears right here technically are a little bit unfavorable for tropical development. Now, it's not wind shear that could kill the system, although if it's not organized enough, it could really weaken it significantly down to a weak tropical storm, if not tropical depression, like we've seen with Isaias, where we had an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane weaken to a tropical storm because of that dry air and that wind shear that was coming from the southeast of the system or southwest. So this is why we really gotta watch out because either it's able to maintain its intensity until development, until things become more favorable near the Bahamas, wherever it goes, or the other choice is it does weaken and potentially dissipate in that area. So this is why the models do become very uncertain really past this. This is kind of the barrier for the system. In 72 hours, it's going to be located anywhere where the line I just drew, and this is where it becomes a whole lot more uncertain for the life of the system. Now, here's a look at that dry air. So this is what it looks like currently. This tropical storm, I think it's like maybe around here, but it's somewhere south of just south of that dry. Now, the dry air. This is not a whole lot of dry air right here. This is technically not really enough dry air to kill a system, but by the 72-hour period, this is what it looks like right now. This little blob of dry air here, it's expected to be right where we have high wind shear, right around here, right over the lower and upper Antilles, where we also have that high amount of wind shear, which is why the models are like, well, is it going to be able to survive not only dry air and wind shear for a small tropical storm, if not a weak tropical storm by this point. But models have also been hinting that the dry air in the wind shear could start really to collapse, especially the dry air could be collapsing by the time it gets to the lower and upper Antilles and the entire Caribbean. So that's why there's also some changes. It doesn't weaken. It seems getting a little bit more likely that potentially that that dryer doesn't weaken. But either way, if there's still dryer, it won't be too much significant dryer. It's not gonna be those big browns that we see over there. It's gonna be light brown, so it's gonna be light dry air. It's almost, it's not too much dryer, but it is potentially a little bit of dryer that could weaken the system slightly or uh, not make it as favorable to become a stronger tropical storm or hurricane, but not enough dryer to kill the system. So that's why it is rather uncertain whether it survived or not that period. Here's a quick look at the GFS model because there's some interesting stuff in there. So this is a potential, tropical depression, tropical storm Josephine right here, 1,008 millibars. But as right here, in the next, I think it's like in the next 24 hours, they do drop it to 1,005 millibars. 1,005, it sticks 1,002, and then 996 as it peaks. So 996, strong tropical storm. And 996, boom, it enters that 72-hour barrier, I guess you can call it. It enters it right there. So what happens after that? GFS shows instant weakening from 996 down to 1,009 millibars, down to 1,000, 1,003, 1,005, 1,007, and then pretty much dead. So GFS shows this completely collapsing once it gets into that area of wind shear and dryer. GFS is like, nah. But if it is able to survive, you can see that it does track right. If it is able to survive, you can see that it just tracks a little bit like this. So that's why we're really gonna have to be careful for that. And then it does dissipate it, but if we follow kind of the cloud cover, it does track a little bit like this from the GFS model. So we'll have to look out for it. But really quick, since we're on the GFS model, by hour, see here, hour 222, two systems. One right here, one right here. Two systems, potentially three systems. Uh, this is when, it's August and the GFS has been consistently showing no development for the next 10 days, but boom, they're waking up. GFS is like, GFS is like, we're getting a hurricane right up the north of there. So that's kind of interesting. They're like, we're getting a 961 hurricane with this. So they actually make a 961 hurricanes just in the middle of nowhere. It kind of meanders around this location as a Category 2, Category 3 hurricane potentially, plus a tropical storm in the main development region, and plus potentially something in the Gulf or Caribbean. So, it looks like this could really be the start of the time where things really start to develop out. And then not only that, so we get that potentially Category 3 hurricane just marinating around this location kind of does something like that. Rather interesting. That potential tropical storm, but we get a potential system, a Gulf system. And Gulf waters are just extremely warm, and it does form potentially a little tropical, some kind of like Imelda, kind of like what we saw with Imelda in 2019 or 2018. But yeah, I do find this one very interesting as it forms here, kind of meanders around this location and shoots up north, still as a potentially a Cat 3 hurricane, Cat 2 hurricane, potentially a Cat 3 hurricane, if not a Category 4. So that is pretty interesting. It seems a little bit unlikely to me, but it is still a possibility that we're definitely going to have to watch out for by hour 384. So that's your update on potentially tropical storm Josephine. I hope that it covered everything for you guys. If you have any questions, comments down below, and I have more updates.